Welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode number 67. This I'm viewing basically the final 9 episodes of Tenshu Sentai Sun Vulcan. Now, one thing I forgot to mention in my last video was that, you see, one thing that this particular series is going for a while, I would say since episode 22, whenever they basically deal with the monsters, is that basically used to be when they summon the sword, usually comes from the head, like it's just been like limited to the head. Later on, they switched it to where it's automatically in the hand and basically glows and then slices up. That was the standard for quite a while, and then started episode 41 to 49. They went back to the old way for a while, and then for the final episode, they went back to that because I think people like that better. Yep. Now, in the case of these episodes, the first 3 are standalone episodes. Now, 42 is, well, let's see if I can find it here. 42 is basically one of these supernatural episodes. Yes, a supernatural episode that looks very similar to something we see in Power Rangers, where you have this room filled with candles. Now, basically, Queen Hydra's plan is simply this: to basically brainwash the entire population of Tokyo. Yes, Tokyo, not all of Japan, because that'd be too much power, just Tokyo, to join the magma, the black magma. And of course, they also have their dragon monger who releases dragon sons in the middle of the night, and it was at a point for 2 straight days nobody got any sleep. And after the monster the suns were destroyed anyways. But it was interesting. At first they said, oh yeah, we had these suns go up. They go up anyways. Put up 7 suns, and it does work at first. Heck, there's at one point we have a group of the Guardians of the Peace basically doing a coup, but look how they was able to basically squash it due to the fact they freed them from the actual mind control thanks to the sun shower. Yep. It's a very interesting episode, but it's a good high stakes one for the series. 43 is basically, oh yeah, you become a genius. Now, I should point out, though, this is very similar to a plot from Denzi Man. Well, mostly it's a plot for 100 stuff. This one is simply put basically a device that basically allows you to cheat. And for this one boy who apparently is very terrible with school, all of a sudden becomes very, very good and gets like hundreds. And here's the thing: this kid studies really hard at what he does, and yet he just doesn't get the hundreds, or at least doesn't get a high score. Though by the end of the episode, after he's freed from the device, he gets a 30%, that is definitely improvement per se, but man, it's like I don't know if he just loses focus, I'm not sure what it is. I mean, heck, my test scores, whenever I test on a test like this, whenever this bad, not really, no, not where it was like 10%. Yep. It was a good educational piece, and you can't always buy this one device in order to basically satisfy your educational need. 44 is a critical episode because we have appearance of a one-shot character who is no friend of Vault Eagle, where he apparently decides to try to steal plans for a new portion of, for a new weapon for the Sun Robo, and you think it's little blueprints, but actually they were fakes. And the whole point of this thing was to have him try to assassinate Hell Saturn. It failed, and the guy does survive. He does get wounded, but he doesn't die per se. But it's definitely a good episode. Yep. And, by the way, the monster of this one is basically the flying squirrel monger. He did previously, the guy who plays him, was playing the costume Artigo of Prince Megiddo from Diamond. Basically, he's actually the main, he was one of the villains from it. I don't think he was the main. I think he was he was, one of the generals for it. But it's nice the fact he came back as a villain for that one, and of course also for He came back for Changeman as well, which that's quite interesting, basically, to watch those two eventually in the future. Yep. Oh yeah, it's also pointed out here that apparently, like, some of the blueprints they borrow from Bad Fever J and so pop up for Flashman. Yes. But starting with episode 45, things become quite interesting. Basically, with 45, we basically enter the endgame arc. Yeah, starting with episode 45, we have the introduction to Izuguma Ginga, Amazon Killer's partner from space. A guy she does not care for because she stabbed him in the back and he basically vice versa, and she does not trust him at all. He refers him as the Galactic Outlaw, and he fights, of course, the Sun Vulcan. Now Amazon Killer didn't want to contact him first because she doesn't trust him, but she contacts him anyways, and you think, oh yeah, why did you get my signal? The lightning signal, of course, they use it a little later on. Eventually, he does join up with the Black Magma, and he's there for a handful of episodes before he eventually is taken care of, which we'll get to that. Now, in the case of the monsters for these final few episodes, by the way, 45 to 48 had the last a few original monsters created for, well, Black Magma. Yes. They also mentioned here something that will come in a future franchise. Basically mentioned about the Galactic Police. Yeah, they're teasing Space Sheriff Gavin here, which I thought was really cool. And of course, Space Sheriff Gavin is canon of the Super Sentai. They kind of confirmed this due to Gavin's appearance, the original actor who plays Space Sheriff Gavin, showing up in the Space Sheriff Gavin versus Go Kaiju movie, which was really good. I do highly recommend checking it out if you're a fan of, well, Space Sheriff Gavin. And I do like the fact we teased that here, which I thought was really good. And of course, the one here is called the Boxer, which that was interesting. Yep. Basically, 45 and 46 basically are like the prelude to what happens in episode 47. It's a lot of setup. And then we have Death Trap Monster, who is one of the last original monsters that were introduced in this one. There is, of course, one more introduced, starting with episode 47, which is basically the fighter the fighter, which basically is a freaking football player. Yeah, he looks like a football player. Yes. Yep. And of course you have 48, which is, well, that is the actual, like, final monster created who wasn't. Because there was well, they did have one character was remodeled. Yeah, I believe. Yeah, he was the. Yeah, the Moe manga was the last official one they introduced. Yeah. Oh yeah. By the way, the mangas for all these episodes, you have Dragon manga, which I've discussed them. The Mechanic manga, which this one's interesting. Flying Squirrel manga, Boxer manga, Death Trap manga, Fighter manga, Moe manga, which was the last official one, and Lightning manga. Yeah, but in the case of what happens in the first couple episodes, like, aside from this guy showing up, eventually him joining up with, of course, the Black Magma, it's revealed here in, I think in episode 45, that Queen Hydra is plotting to is basically gaining power for herself, overthrow the Machine Empire. What she eventually does in episode 47. Because 47 is basically like, okay, let's just kill off basically one of the most important characters of this entire run. Like, in 47, the way they do this is that we have this fighter monger who is supposed to be the brother of, well, the brother of Gimma. But, of course, the guy is sabotaged. And, of course, well, Gimma is basically angered, so he pretty much does something completely unexpected. He does something to insult Hell Saturn. He throws a statue of his god right in front of him, saying he possibly may have killed the omnipotent god. He actually did it, because what the heck this thing is by far one of those baffling things. By the way, when the statue pops up, this is the first time it's popped up since episode 6. Yes, since episode 6 that we had an appearance by the omnipotent god. And then we have an excellent brawl between Genma and Hell Saturn, which just ended with Hell Saturn's death. Which, that was a shocker, to say the least. I mean, this guy was practically the main villain of this entire run. He gets killed off in the 4th to last episode. And then, of course, like, okay, with him dead, like, okay, who's going to take over Machine Empire? It's clearly not the guy who killed Hell Saturn, because no one trusts him. So, Queen Hedra, she becomes the queen. Yep. That lasts for about 2 episodes. Yep. She basically launches another, like, she launches an official one, the Mindmonger, which I believe was like the last one, the only one she actually ordered to be created. Yeah, it was the only one that basically she ordered to be created. And yeah, and also we have this thing where we actually have the Sun Vulcan, I believe it was in episode 48, I believe it was, where they actually had it where, okay, so in order, because basically Vault Eagle was captured, and of course this was the Mindmonger, he was captured, and instead of heading back going back to the Machine Empire base, oh no, we're not going back there, we're heading to this cave, and then we're going to exchange him for Sun Robo. And, well, they bring Vol Jaguar, and of course they ask, okay, bring out the Sun Robo, and of course Chief's like, okay, bring him out, and they do. They bring out the Robo. It's like, okay, and I want you guys to get out of the vehicle, and they do, and then you have him go inside the Action Megazord, which makes him the first villain to take control of an actual Megazord in Super Sentai history. Well, he doesn't really control it per se. He's inside of it, yes, but here's the thing: he never pilots it because the Chief disabled the controls. I'm like, I guess he can do that, even though it's like miles away. And of course he's shocked to get out, and of course the Vol Eagle does get freed, and of course they eventually destroy the Mindmonger. And as in the case of well, yeah, after the case of Mindmonger is defeated. And then, like, the very next episode, like, okay, we basically, like, get rid of, like, 2 characters in this episode. Like, well, in the case of Queen Hedra, for her crime of overthrowing the Machine Empire, the omnipotent god who brings back Hell Saturn as a ghost, or at least a phantom, who pretty much causes Queen Hedra's heart to rust. And then by 49... where, by the way, before this, she's like dying, and then she does something completely unexpected. Now, as far as I can tell, she never did this in Densei Man. She kidnaps a supporting character. Yep, she kidnaps the daughter of the chief in order to sacrifice her to the omnipotent god. And she's about to sacrifice her, and then she dies before she gets a chance to do it. Yep, killing Queen Hedra in the Pendulum episode. And like, okay, well, Hell Saturn's dead, Queen Hedra's dead, and who's left? Amazon Killer takes over his control of the Machine Empire for this episode and the following one, and then she's taken care of. We'll get to her. In the case of Idra, he is ordered to be remodeled by the omnipotent god to be a monger, the lightning monger. Yeah, in the case of remodel, it just slapped the logo on his face and proclaimed lightning monger. There's literally nothing different about him. And eventually, of course, he does go giant size. And of course, he does battle some Vulcan goes giant size and gets defeated. Also, here's something interesting I should point out, though. 45 does something quite interesting. Because previously, they used like one ball. They used the same technique over and over again in order to defeat all the monsters. This one, with exceptions like 1 and 2, this one they actually stopped using that for the remainder of these episodes and basically switched from the beach ball to 3 footballs. And of course they punt them, and of course they come in for triple cross, and of course they all spin together from this big ball, and they kick it, and then eventually the monster's destroyed. And of course they break the monster, goes to giant size, And it's used throughout all the episodes. It's even used in the final episode on Amazon Killer herself. Which, okay, so they pretty much go and search for the actual base. At least they do it in the Pendulum episode. Not the final episode like they did in Battle Fever J. So they have pretty good now throughout the whole entire run. It is very hinted. They kind of suspected that the base machine pirate was in North Pole. They didn't have exact location for it. I mean, they had a good area to look for, but anytime. And eventually it took a scout plane to find out exactly where the heck this base even was. And they go there. By the way, we also had... Now, before I continue here, before we have what happens next, we have it where we finally reveal what the heck the Omnipotent God is. It's a brain in a jar who has electric powers. I am not kidding about that. That's seriously the true form of the Omnipotent God. I'm like, wow, that's... Oh my gosh. Yeah, and the Omnipotent God basically is controlling everything for the next couple episodes. Yeah, it's by far the most disappointing conclusion to this whole Omnipotent God stuff. Yeah, and like, I'm thinking like, okay, if Hellsider is a servant of the Hell God, of the Omnipotent God, why the heck does this thing not pop up like after episode 6 after its brief cameo? Like, it was never mentioned again after that until it pops up for this episode. Well, because it offends Hellsider. Yeah, it's a brain in the jar, and of course, and, oh yeah, by the way, then we have where Amazon Killer finds out about it, and of course she, in order to become a true queen of the Machine Empire, she has to kill the Omnipotent God. Tries and fails, and then she's forced to battle the Sun Vulcan after they're basically just sort of like dragged to the base. Of course, Chief goes with them because it's his daughter who was taken. Yes, his daughter was taken while eating at a restaurant. This is technically the second time that this has happened. At least this time, basically, it's actually at their base, not some nearby location. And we see him, and he actually see him for the first time. We actually have an episode where, typical standard of the last few, we actually the team go to the actual room where the villains usually meet. But here's something unique about this one. This actually is the first time, and I don't know if this happened in the later Sentai. I know it didn't happen in a lot of the other ones I've seen, like Zoo Ranger, Die Ranger. Well, Die Ranger technically did once, but going with the team to go to the actual villain base for the final episode. As far as I can tell, this is the first time this has ever happened. I don't know if it happened to Go Ranger because I am watching the Go Ranger. So, in case you might say if it happened to Go Ranger, go right ahead. I'll watch a later point. But yeah, and it's interesting though seeing the Chief in the villain base because this is quite something to see this. And they talk to the Omnipotent God. Of course, they don't see what the heck this thing is like the last minute of the episode. So they have basically all three members of Sun Vulcan battle Amazon Killer. And of course, he wants the machine men to basically help her. They don't. They practically just ignore her. Oh, by the way, in the case of the machine men, they briefly fight the Sun Vulcan when he gets to the base. But they're easily taken care of. And of course, they go inside. And of course, they meet the Omnipotent God. Which, I mean, the scene itself is very similar to what happened in Battle Fever J. Because, of course, we had to retread some plot threads from previous Sentai. This one's fine. I don't have a really big issue with this one. So, they take an Amazon Killer in a pretty good fight. Amazon Killer finally dies. You might think, okay, with her gone, like, who's left? Well, gotta take out the Zero Girls next. Yep, take out the Zero Girls. We had to... Chief's order, like, destroy all these machines. We'll get rid of the machine empire right here. They tried to. Think it works? Nope. Fixes automatically. And then these consoles just merge together to form the final giant, the final monger, which is basically a mech for the villains. And the three Zero Girls go inside. They power it. Of course, they have one final battle with the Sun Volvo. They destroy the monster and get rid of all the Zero Girls. Yep, they're all gone. And you think, okay, Queen Hydra's gone. Amazon Killer's gone. Hellsiren's gone. Like, all the villains are gone. You probably think, is that it? No. There's still one villain left. The Omnipotent God himself. And they come to the room, and they think Misa's there, even though this is... And of course, she points out, this is not Misa. She would never tell him to go to his knees and surrender. Excuse me. So he kneels down, looks at the Vulcan stick, And then he grabs it from Vol Eagle, deflects the blast of the omnipotent guy, and basically kills him. Which makes it the first time ever that a mentor has killed the true villain of the series. Which, that is something. Yes, Power Rangers would use this kind of trope in SPD, but never again after that. So, then with him gone, the place starts self-destructing. So, they quickly go find Misa, and of course the place self-destructs, and the machine power is all gone. Completely gone. There was hints in the narration, oh yeah, maybe the second machine power, a third one. Nope, don't deal with that at all. Because next one's going to be Go-Go 5, and apparently take on the Cult in the next one, which should be interesting to take on the watch. But I'm not going to watch it just yet, per se. That would not be the next Super Sentai watch. The very next I'm going to watch is going to be Live Man. The reason why? Came out the same year I was born. Plus, I'm very curious about this one. Go-Go 5, that'll be done after I do one after this one, because basically, there'll be 2 Sentai watch before I watch that one, because why not? Yep. So, that's the particular video. Next video is going to be my final thoughts on Sun Vulcan. Okay, next video. Bye.